All right, we're back. We got a great episode today. We have Al Nittoli from Guardian Caps. If you guys are familiar, and by the way, Coach is not just obviously with Guardian Caps. He's also a football coach at DePaul Catholic High School, an assistant there, and it's one of the top programs in New Jersey. So we'll talk to him about not just the Guardian Caps, but obviously some of the things that he's seen within football as well. But Guardian, is with the NFL. If you guys see, if you watch Hard Knocks, you'll see the guys have the Guardian caps on in the preseason. That's the soft shell that goes over the hard shell, and it's a safety thing, and obviously the NFL, especially since and we talked a little bit before we got on the show. Since the whole concussion movie, I remember the impact of that. The Guardian Caps have had a huge surge. We have it in our program in Middletown, AYF, where I coach my sons. So I see it firsthand. We have them on in every practice. So the emphasis on safety and continuing to talk about safety in football. It's really great to have Al on and talk more about it. Al, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate being here. Thank you for having me.
Al, and one of the things that's really great to talk about Al on this is Al, obviously, I said coaches in high school, but he also, for many, many years, ran the Oakland youth football program. And, his son was in that program. Those kids, he's seen, the impact of hits and all those kind of things in youth football. He's seen the highs and the lows of it, and then obviously going into high school. So he's seen it at multiple levels. He really kind of understands the impact of safety in football and the things that are constantly evolving on it. My first question is, Guardian to me has become there are other things out there, and we had a group on that did another version that was like more of a harder shell version, I guess I would call it. But Guardian has become like the premier group with respect to safety as far as the additional soft shell on top of the helmets. But it's always so hard. Like for me as a football coach, like you're always trying to quantify what does exactly it mean when it puts on, when you ask a parent, we put this thing on, what is this thing doing for us, right?
Yeah.
So talk about like Guardian from a safety standpoint, the evolution of it,
Sure.
and the impact.
So it's funny when you brought up the Oakland Braves. When it was about 2000, probably 16 or 15, I was also coaching at Bergen Catholic at the time. And at that time, Bergen Catholic was in Guardian Caps, one of the first high schools in New Jersey to be in Guardian Caps. And I was like, what are these things? These are pretty cool. And the linebacker coach, Ed Van Curren, was at the time the Guardian Cap sales rep. His son is now the head coach at Fairleigh Dickinson. So Ed's like, hey, if you want me to come talk to your youth program, we could possibly do that. So he came down. I had this whole town hall where I brought in Riddell and Guardian Caps and mouthpieces and really tried to get out in front of the whole concussion thing. So it was right around the heat of it. And I'm taking over this youth football program that had 60, 70 kids in it. And I was like, we really have to rebuild this thing and restore some confidence from the parents.
Right.
So we were the first youth program to be in Guardian Caps in the state of New Jersey. So my son, who's now 18 years old, he's been in Guardian Caps since he's 8 years old. And when I tell you, from a coaching perspective and a parent perspective, we all focus on head safety, and we'll get into that. But Guardian Caps in general during the course of practice, you know how it goes. A hard helmet to an 8-year-old's shin, elbow, body, whatever. Those are tough blows to take at that age when your body is not fully just like ramped up to do it. And sometimes it makes the game not so fun. So the initial thing that I saw was, yeah, we have head safety, but the sound of the game and the safety of the game just went up tremendous because the body blows and just the little things you would think of. As far as the head-to-head contact and all that sort of stuff, it was amazing what we saw in our program. We went from having 5 to 7 concussions a year in practice to literally 0. And we changed the way we practiced a lot too. So with the combination of the Guardian caps and just being a little bit more aware of how you're doing drills, how far apart you are, where you're coming from, what you're exposing the kids to, really was successful for us. At the high school level, we've implemented those at our high school, and as well as anybody else in North Jersey, you get after it in practice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're going on 3 seasons now with nothing happening in practice, which is really incredible.
That's amazing.
So you see it happening, and a lot of people focus on like the big hits, like, oh, that must have been a concussion. It's really not
It's
just
not those
that.
ones.
Yeah,
No way.
it's the subconcussive grinding, especially with the offensive and defensive linemen, where you'll see sometimes in the higher levels, the Guardian caps, the crown of them, they'll really wear, and then you'll say to yourself, "Wow, that was helmet to helmet wear like last year with two
Yeah.
guys just grinding and grinding and grinding." So coupled with all that, I mean, it's just been really remarkable how this thing has really transformed itself from 2015 to where we are now in 2024, and seeing it on the field in NFL games.
Right.
It's really interesting, and it's like one of the things I think that parents get assured on more is that when you see the hits, I think with the guard, you said the sound, it's no longer that crack sound that you hear if somehow they do accidentally bang, helmet to helmet or something,
Yep.
or someone hits somebody. It's a much lighter sound. I think, and for those people who don't know, like when you're at a youth practice, and it was probably the same when you were a youth coach. Parents are sitting there the whole time in football
Whole
watching.
time.
Like
Yep.
right, and they're like right there. They're like
Right there. Yep.
right on the side.
Right there. So like they
Yeah.
know every time you yell in practice, they know every time you're upset in practice, and most of them care less about that. I mean, other than unless you go crazy, but what they really care about is he okay? Are they what if somebody gets hit? Like how fast does that whistle go? Like are the coaches quick with the whistle, right? And I think the Guardian helmets really do a great job of lessening that sound that makes them feel a lot more assured in that process. And I think that's really, really a unique thing that the safety of the soft shell helmets does.
Right. And I think, like you said, Dave, like we've talked about it, right? And then when we had, Jim Kramer on from Safer Sports, like ultimately, like everybody's in the same world of like wanting to help this game continue to be a staple, right? And that only happens if we take care of the youth guys, right? And like you said, I think it's more of an appeal to the parents, and like you said, the optic aspect of it, in terms of, like you said, they're right there at practice, so they're seeing everything that's going to go on, they're hearing those sounds, and a lot of them, whether they played the game or not, grew up watching those big hits, right? And that's I mean those were the highlights that used to be on Sports Center, were the bone crunching hits and that type of stuff. And now to see, if the younger you start with the protections and the, hey, we're implementing this, right, and that technology, like that's where I think the game will continue to grow, regardless. And now, like Al
I
said,
lost
like his
sound. I
son's
can't hear
been
you.
in it. You're good. His son's been in it
Can
since.
you hear us, Al? Can you hear?
Can you hear us or no?
No, I don't think he can. You might have to go back. You
uh,
might have to go back out and come
Yeah,
back.
go back out and go back in.
Let
Like
me,
I
let
said,
me, let me see if,
let me see. You want me to text them?
yeah, I'll
See
send
if
them
I
a
can
quick
text them.
message. Oh, there he
Oh,
did.
there we go. But like I was saying, like I think that stuff, right, like kind of all ties into it. And now if they like when they were growing up, right, parents, like that was it. It was physical football, it was contact, it was this, it was that. So now to see us moving into this new world where literally, like Al said, his son since 8 years old has been in a Guardian. Like he doesn't know any different. You know what I mean? Like they look at, the way we played football, like we looked at guys in leather helmets. You know what I mean? So I think all of that together can kind of just add to, the growth of the game. And like Al said, you saw a dip for a couple years, and now you're starting to see it back up on the rise. I mean, I saw
That's an
DeBro.
interesting point that you brought up there. I didn't even think about it from that standpoint. I guess because I'm 50 years old, I still think of myself as being young. You brought up a great point. They look at they look at the football that like
Back in here.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
Can you hear us now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
All right, cool.
I think the point you brought up, Derek brought up a point. He was talking about how important things like the guardian caps are now, and he was saying, I was just about to say that he brought up a point where he said they look at how we played football, like when like me and Al were in high school, or even probably when you were in high school, Derek.
Definitely.
As it was like when the guys that coached me played without face masks, you know what I mean, and leather helmets, right? And that's how, because I always remember myself Mario Alia, and Mario Alia had, I don't know if you know that name, because Al's from Garfield.
You're a Boilermaker?
Originally, he's a Garfield guy. He's moved on up. He's moved on up in the world, but he's originally a Boilermaker.
I didn't know you were a Boilermaker.
Yes.
Oh,
man.
yeah.
Purple, baby.
Big
Purple.
Yeah, he bleeds that purple. But so what's interesting about it is I never thought about it like that. I thought that's an interesting point that you brought up, because the kids are now cultured to start to wear those guardian caps, because I remember Mario Alia, who was our athletic director, and he had in his office his helmet, which was a leather helmet. Okay. And I was like, you played with that was the helmet you guys wore at high school?
It's
and
crazy.
Then, I guess in the 50s,
I mean,
that's what he wore.
Even to look at the helmet, like I have my helmets up on my back wall. I look at my helmet now in comparison to what these kids are wearing, just in general, and that's without even talking about a guardian or a safety
battering
cap.
ram.
I'm like, I can't, like, that whole first week of practice, you more about it was like, dude, my head hurts just from my helmet, right?
Yep.
Like these guys, like it's just so different. And to add now this, I mean, I see Jabril Peppers the other day in the game, and he's got a guardian cap on, and it's like, that's like a guy that
He just said
you're talking high school.
He signed a huge contract. I want to play as long as I can play.
That's what it is. And, I personally think you'll see, now, obviously we have all the other injuries, right? But for the most part, like if you could stay in it mentally and that aspect of it, like you could extend your career, even if it's 1 or 2 years longer, right? Than the average, which is what, 3 years, maybe, so now you can add that, like,
well, that's millions of dollars, obviously. That's
millions of dollars.
If you add a year or two to your career, that's
just get to that second contract, right? Like to that second contract.
So is Jabril the he wore it in the game? I didn't see that.
He wore it in the game.
Yeah, there was 5 guys that wore it that day.
Okay.
And now, Al, my question. So now they have the guardians, and then they have the like the sleeve that's basically like the helmet, right? Like looks like the helmet. So is that like provided? Do they do that on their own? Is that like you?
No. So what happened was we really were not anticipating this season them being worn in games.
Wow.
But there was such a demand for it that we had to get our design team going. So we're designing
hey guys, let's pick up the
So we're working with the NFL teams directly, obviously, on a day-to-day basis, because a lot of teams have 4 or 5 different helmet looks.
Yeah, especially because they added the new rule where you can have a third one now.
Yeah, so it's a very difficult process in making sure that the penny cap matches as closely as possible
100%.
to the game day helmet look. I was gonna say something before, and Dave brought up a good point about an old time coach. I found in the youth programs, right? You bring in these coaches to come coach your kids, and they really don't know anything about coaching other than the last time they were coached. So
Correct.
If you're a 40-year-old guy, it was 30 years ago, your coach was that guy who was having you, run head to head into a brick wall, right? And if you did it, you were soft. So there's a lot of I made a really strong effort in when we got our coaches in to coach our coaches.
You got to educate them.
Kind of just set a playbook for this is how we're going to do things, whether it's in 2nd grade or 8th grade. We're going to look the same. We're going to dress the same. On Mondays, we're going to do this. On Tuesdays, we're going to do this. On Wednesdays, we're going to do this. So that as the head of a program, I didn't have to think about what is the 7th and 8th grade team doing today? What is the 5th? So if we're in uppers as a program. If we're in full as a program. And then what are your drills going to look like? Because I don't know about you. I look at the NFL drills. They're doing the same drills that you see in 2nd grade, right?
Yep.
They're just amped up a little bit. So we had a drill package of these are the drills that you're permitted to do with Oakland Braves football. And these are the days that you're permitted to do them. And this is the amount of time that you're going to be doing them throughout the course of the week. This is your live time. This is when you're going live. This is how much live time you're going to get. And in the beginning, it was tremendous pushback. But before you know it, like, it really works because everyone's on the same page. And our program went from 70 kids to almost 200 kids because
Al, that
all
is
was going on. And
That's phenomenal.
that's the most, and now that I'm a youth
Now,
coach,
yeah,
right?
now Dave's in
Because
it.
I've gone
Al.
full
Dave's
swing
in
here.
it.
So it's phenomenal that you say that. And I didn't realize that you did that with the Oakland Braves, but
Yeah.
it's phenomenal that you do it because I literally come to practice like I have, and my coaches do a great job. But the first year, last year, I think I only had 3 assistants. Now I have 5 guys. But the first year, the first thing they wanted to do was literally, I'm not kidding, Oklahoma's, right?
Of course. Yeah.
And it's the first thing they wanted to do. And I was like, no. Like, we
You're
have
like-
to progress, and we're not going to do Oklahoma's. It's going to be, any kind of the tackling is going to be modified from an angle. We don't want, we want to limit the fact that they go head on as much as humanly possible. Right.
Yep.
So we did that. It worked out really well. Now this year we're no longer in development because we're now 9 and we're like competitive, and you have a little more tackling. But I watch what we do and how we approach our practice, and then I watch everybody's doing something different. And it's not an indictment of the program. It's just everybody has to figure it out for themselves. And I think that what you did is phenomenal because I think it's important to have a stage set of how much hitting is necessary to get the kids to whatever point we're looking to get them to, right?
Yep.
Luckily, I've been a high school coach where we've reduced, all those years, we reduced over the years the level of tackling. Like what I did when I was in Saddlebrook in 2002, what I was doing with my DBs, you would have me arrested for that, now, so it's completely changed and evolved over those years. You obviously have to have a certain level of hitting, but it's that part of football. I think more and more because I watch way too many clips on Instagram where like,
it's disgusting. It's abusive.
It's disgusting, right? With these 2 kids,
especially now, like, but back then, Dave, like even for me when I started, I couldn't really go on the internet and find all these drills. Now you can learn how to do anything. So if you want to go and search, you could have practice plans, at your fingertips within seconds. So it's really just they really don't know any better, or they don't have the time. So I always said to myself, listen, I have 80 coaches in my program from top to bottom. They all have jobs and they all have kids. They don't want to go online and do all this work. But if I'm the commissioner of the football program and I want things to look a certain way and be a certain way, I have to do that work for them. So I put together the practice plans, I put together the video clips, and I put together the lesson plans, and I would have them come in twice a week from January until we started the next season, buy pizzas for the guys, buy some beers for the guys, and we would just literally go over the drills and how they're supposed to be done and what they're supposed to look like. And you had made a good point about, like, those A-gap tackles are always the toughest ones, right? Angle tackling, you can get A-gap tackle. We did everything with rolling bags. So anything that was like going to be that hit, I had them hit a bag because guess what? I know the kid that I have playing middle linebacker, and I'm not going to put a kid who can't do it in there. So I don't need him hitting a bunch of kids that are kind of afraid to run through the A-gap and face them. So let him hit a rolling bag. So with technology and the drills that are out there and just the awareness, coupled with, advancements in technology and safety, whether it's the type of helmet you wear or a guardian cap or the right fitting mouthpiece, which is like really important as well.
One of the most underrated things, I think.
The chin strap that isn't on properly and not fitted correctly. Like,
that's the other
those
part.
Are all injuries waiting to happen that could be prevented. So in an environment, when I first started, when Concussion movie and everything was at its peak, I kept saying to myself, what are the controllables? Like, what are the things that I can do that can help the perception of the Oakland Braves football program or any youth program make a parent feel safe to sign their kid up to come play football? And you're always going to have those kids that are going to play anyway. And then you're going to have those kids that have no business playing. And then you're going to have those borderline kids. And those are the kids. Like, those are the kids that choose to go play lacrosse or fall baseball instead of come play football because they said, oh, we could just play football in 8th grade. And I'm not a big proponent of that. I understand the mindset of it, but I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that football's been kind of like unsafe, coached by guys that really don't know what they're doing. So why should I have my son take hits from 2nd grade to 8th grade when he can just start in 8th grade? But if you're running a great program, like, there's a lot of I equate it to a fastball. You can't get into a cage and get into a high school game and hit a 100-mile-an-hour fastball if you haven't seen a 30-mile-an-hour fastball, a 40, a 50, a 60, and you've built yourself up.
You got to build up to it.
Right. It's the same thing with football. My son would never be able to go into a DePaul Catholic football game and compete at a high level if he didn't do that in 2nd grade and 3rd grade and 4th, and built his confidence and his knowledge of the game and the way to do things the right way. So I just think there's been a lot of like bad coaches, bad programs that have really made the game worse. And I think that's really on an upturn, which I'm really excited about because I spend my life now traveling from youth programs, high school programs, college programs, and NFL programs from Maine down through Delaware, 365 days a year. So it's nonstop. And I see what everybody's doing across the country. I see where the problem areas are, and I see where the real good programs are. And I think there's many more good ones out there now than bad ones for sure.
I think you nailed it on the head. It's definitely improved dramatically. The issue always becomes when obviously it's competitive football, right? And there's wins and losses at the end of it. And what happens is, you're right that they don't have the time. These guys have full-time jobs. Yep. It's like the first thing
Dave,
in my
even
head
assistant high school football coaches, right? Like even assistant high school football coaches. If you're not, a teacher, you have another job. Like now, I'm supposed to go and watch film and do all this other stuff.
And these guys are volunteers, so you got to remember that too. So there's something with guys who aren't, they're not getting paid even a small stipend to do it. They're doing it, usually they have a kid on the team or they like football that much. But I think, it's funny because immediately my thought goes to like, I should have Al coming in and explain this whole process because we're probably considered one of the better as far as overall programs because the guy who runs it's very good. But like this would take things to a next level where guys wouldn't have to worry about, what their experience level is of playing, right? You wouldn't have to be like, oh, great. Well, Dave's played college. He's played, coach high school for me. All right, that's an easy one that you're probably going to be able to get a certain amount of things done the right way. The hard one is this guy hasn't played since high school. Okay,
like you were saying, 20 years.
And the guy who he learned from, because I think about, and you were from Garfield, so we played the same conference, and guys did things basically the same way. Most of the guys, Garfield, Saddlebrook, Lodi, Emwood Park, they were all those old school guys before them were all the original guys from those areas. 100%. And they all taught football kind of a similar way for the most part. It was very, very, very downhill, very, very physical, and everything had to do with that. And that's changed. So if a guy's learned that way, and now, they have kids 25 years later, they are now in charge of a coaching a team, and they're literally trying to figure out with their other assistants. I think those guidelines are so important. And I think what you talked about was so important in that, AYF can have their general guidelines because I'm sure they do. These guys are not looking at them. They are because they don't understand how it applies to them directly, right? They don't understand how it applies to their daily practice. And so to give them a daily practice plan without knowing the intricacies of their individual program doesn't make sense. And that's what I think is the beauty of what you were doing. And I'm actually going to talk to my commissioner about that for going forward because I think it would help. Like I see such a wide range. Like it's not that they can't coach. There are guys that coach really well.
They just don't know how to do it to the upper level.
You have to coach the coaches, and we started at the same time and we ended at the same time. So how many coaches say, "Oh, parents are complaining this practice went for this long."
Well, no. Dave, you've had that issue, right? Because Dave's cut down practice time, and then
I went to an hour and a half. Okay, last year because
Yep.
we were in development. It was like really you're 8 years old. It was an hour and a half. Well, I thought the mistake AYF made, and this is just to me, it was a huge mistake. They got rid of development at 9U and it just made it all competitive because I guess it was easy just to make it make it all competitive, meaning no
Yep.
more coaches on the field, right? So
Yep.
you didn't have a choice. We're not in the field when we coach.
Right.
So
At
with
9.
9U. So we're on the sideline. So now what has happened, I had to explain to my parents that like practice may go a half hour longer because, going through, actual plays where I'm not there to tell them where to go and they
Mhm.
have to they have to figure it out, is very, very hard. I mean, I'm lucky. Like the two kids who were my son and the other kid that are my quarterbacks, they know each other really well.
Yep.
They kind of are similar kind of athletes, both guys for the most part. So I'm able to kind of get away with certain things. But I just think about how other guys are not able to get away with that. Like I'm able to
Yeah.
get away with it because my son is a quarterback and the other quarterback who's also good, they're similar kind of guys, probably similar type of body types too.
Mhm.
So it makes it easy, right? I'm not taking two different guys and they have to learn different things and they're able to take charge pretty well, right? But it's not that way. And I've done this. I had to go to a system because the first two games we weren't running a lot of plays, but I had it on their wrist and they had the names of the plays. Now the quarterbacks could remember everything, right? But basically they were spending half their time getting guys lined up, right? Because they knew it and it was
Nine's
hard.
a little bit young.
They were young, right? But so then we went to graph. Literally, it's a graphic. What everybody does. My quarterbacks don't like it as much, but it helps everybody else a lot more, right? So,
Sure.
but I think that those kind of things are things that, as a program, whatever your individual program, you could have suggestions for guys. Because I didn't know that because last year they had it on their wrist, but I was in the huddle with them. I
Mhm.
was able to take Johnny, put him over here as a wingback, and say, block that kid right there, number 18.
Yeah, totally different. Yep.
So, and as they evolve, you need to be able to do those things and to be able to show them, okay, this level of kid can maybe handle this level, because I was a high school coach. I didn't really know what they could handle,
Sure.
so I knew from a safety standpoint what we didn't want to do. I knew kind of development wise how I want to develop them skill wise and physically. But then you get to the actual play aspect because they got to play the game at some point and you're on the sideline. And that part is really hard and the evolution of that. So I think what you talk, I mean, that's something that you did that is unbelievable. And I don't know how many programs are starting to do that, but like that's something that
I hope they take that model because we'll
Yeah.
be in
I just
and
felt
as a
like
high
there
school
was.
coach, like
Yeah.
I would be so thankful, even to just understand that I knew my kids were being coached the right
Right.
way before they got into my program in terms of the high school. It just cuts down on so much of the time and the not like
Yep.
the other kind of nonsense, the bad habits, and I've been doing this since second grade and all that kind of stuff. Like, and you
Yeah.
ultimately like that will only increase the amount of players that continue to play football because they'll be encouraged and they'll be coached the right way so that they don't get a bad taste in their mouth and then never
Yep.
come out. And how many times do we see a guy that like doesn't play football anymore because he had a bad coach in second or third grade, like when it's
Yeah.
the most pivotal to kind of give them those positive pieces of the puzzle.
The phrase that I've always hated in coaching and in youth sports and even high school sports for that matter is it's the way we've always done it. That's the way we've always done it. And
Adapt or
that
die.
is just so bad. Yeah. So Drew Gibbs was a good friend of mine, rest his soul. And he said to me, I ran into him at a coach's clinic. I'm like, man, you still go to these things. He goes, the minute I stop going to these things, I'm going to retire because you're never too old to learn something. Right. So when you're bringing these coaches in, you're explaining how you're going to do things. It wasn't very well received by the coaches in the beginning. Like, I'm going to tell you what to do. And it was more along the lines of like, this is how it's going to be. Like, this is a volunteer position. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but this is about keeping the kids safe and growing the program and developing a winning program. So we would tell people when it came to like play calling and stuff, I didn't really get on the coaches on how they called the game, but if we ran power to the right, it was called the same thing in second grade as it was in eighth grade. It was never called the same thing in high school, though, because high school coaches come and go. And where my program is located, I have kids going to Hills. I have kids going to Ramapo. I have kids going to Bergen and Joe's and all over. So I wasn't really a feeder program for any specific coach or program, which some high school coaches did not like. But what I always wanted to say was when a kid got to freshman year of football, that high school coach said, this kid understands how to play football, how to prepare for football. You know, we had mandatory film. Every kid had to bring a notebook, had a pen. They had to wear their same shorts and their T-shirts to film sessions as they did to walk through. So we tried to prepare kids in second grade for high school, in very simple ways. And then we ramped it up as they got up to seventh and eighth grade and they were about to go.
And like you said, like and each little program, right? Like you could, dial it up as much as you want or not, right? Like it all depends on how you want it. But I just think even with the general structure of giving guys some practice plans, and even within their own teams, like, hey, you have a little wiggle room to do what you want here, but I don't want to look over and see you going going rogue, because then then it's not good for anybody.
And that happens a lot, so. Having guardian caps on kids' heads kind of is just another layer of defense against stupidity at the youth level, right? Because there's a lot of coaches out there that need some help and need some guidance. So it's an effective tool on its own. But when you couple that with smart coaching, good technique, smart drills, it becomes really effective.
What's the basic science behind the guardian cap? I mean, I don't know if this is an area of your but what is like the basic science like for any parent to really understand?
So when I was at my first, I remember seeing guardian caps. It might have been 2014 or 15, and the guy that was working at the booth at the time said, "Give me your hand." And I said, "Okay." And he took the two guardian caps on helmets and smashed my hand, like between the two helmets. And there's the technology. Like there's the common sense approach to guys like you and me. Like I'm not a science guy, but I know like two hard objects hitting each other is going to hurt. Two hard objects are going to definitely hurt. Two soft objects are going to hurt a lot less. So as far as like the manufacturing of it and the patents and stuff like that, I'm not a science guy. I can't tell you that. But what I can tell you is when you have that guardian cap on and you're hitting someone else with a guardian cap on, it's crazy, Dave. That you really just have to try it. I mean, it's just an amazing feel because I have one kid that said to me, I want to start wearing them in games. And I'm like, why? He goes, because I'm a lineman and I don't have headaches anymore when I come home from practice.
That's amazing.
Right. And he's a lineman. So he's not pounding guys. He's just, linemen, their faces constantly buried on a sled, on a bag, on another kid, on a coach, right? And it's constant. So that's really the science behind
it. Do you think in the long run that either helmets will evolve or Guardian evolves to change how the helmet is, in a sense to be more like how a Guardian is?
I think you're definitely going to see our product change the landscape of what's out there. What that turns into and how that evolves, I have no idea. What I do know is there's millions and millions and millions of polycarbonate and plastic helmets out there that aren't going away anytime soon. Because think about the investment.
Oh, the turnover,
right? So like even like the newer Vices helmets and stuff that have some of the technology in them, some position specific helmets. You're talking $700.
I think that's one of the big next moves. Too,
$700, $800.
Easily, yeah. And that's why you see a lot of kids now like investing in their own helmets, like and buying their own helmets.
How are you going to implement that into a youth program where, like, for $50, $60, you put this on top and you still have, that safety that you need. So.
And I bought the Vicus helmet at first because when my son was starting, I was like, oh, let me just get the greatest helmet out there, and it was like it was heavy, dude. It was super heavy. And
They're just
I
not
know,
ready. They're just not built for
right?
Yep.
eighth grade and down. Maybe some of the bigger kids can handle it, but the youth game is the game right now that's got to be just saved, and you want just
That's the one you
participation
really
numbers
have
to
to
go up,
babysit.
and you want 100%. And I think we're in a good spot for that.
Yeah,
Well,
like Dave, like the one thing I did see is that there will be very, very shortly, like position specific helmets that are coming out. Like, you know what I mean? Like they're gonna now start to build helmets. Like it's not just gonna be like, oh hey, you're a large, you're a medium, you're this. Like there's gonna be, hey, this is a lineman helmet, this is a skill guy helmet, this is built for linebackers. Like that's like I believe from what I've I try to do as much
Yeah, and
research as I can.
some of them are out there already, just like there
Yeah.
are shoulder pad specific shoulder pads, right? So
Right.
back when we got shoulder pads, we just got shoulder pads. We looked like
That's it. I was like, hey, give me
Herschel
the
Walker.
smallest one.
Yeah.
And I
Everyone
can
looked
get
like
my
Herschel
arms as
Walker, I
high
think.
as I can, and then that's it. If I could have worn lacrosse shoulder pads, I probably would have. But
Yeah.
that's
I was a
little
wide
bit
receiver
different.
with a neck roll in 1984. Yeah.
Hey, that's listen. We have a player now who's playing linebacker at Hunt, and all of a sudden we looked at him the other day, and he's wearing a neck roll. I'm like, this is crazy. What's going on?
I know.
It's really, really interesting. And the other thing, and I'm curious your thoughts on this. So, because you coach DePaul, where you guys have a lot of really, really good players that come from probably a lot of all-star programs, but a mix. I'm sure a mix, but a lot of kids from all-star. And what I've noticed, and maybe this was how it was 20 years ago, I just didn't notice it. And you were in obviously youth football a lot longer than I was, so maybe you did notice it, but the levels of kids, even at the youth level, is much greater because you can get trainers, or you can work with. And I've noticed that there are kids that are like here, and here, like super basic, like they're out there just playing because they wanted to play. There are kids that are decent athletes, but they don't like put any more time. And then you get this level of kids that are good, at least a minimum good athletes, but they're putting in a lot more work, and it's created that. And obviously, if you get an elite athlete who's he's going to be. But you see the good athlete that's putting in a lot of work has far distanced himself from the kid who just plays, even if he was a good athlete. And so I've seen three levels just in my 2 years, and that I didn't really think I noticed before. Like there were kids talent-wise that were different level, but I'm talking about like physical and skill, like things they can do and understand is totally different. Have you seen that? Like you're coaching the high school, when you kids come from other programs coming to you, have you seen that at all? Or
so I think kids coming into high school now are much more prepared for high school football than they were 20 years ago. But I also think that holds true in all walks of life with kids. Kids have a lot of information at the fingertips. They're exposed to things at such a young age. And I almost think like some of it's too much. And I think some of these kids also sometimes get in the hands of not so good trainers, right? So they develop like a lot of very bad habits, right? And bad mindsets. But there is no doubt that the stud that you're getting freshman year now is much different than the stud you're getting freshman year in 1984. It's like that kid in 84 was just a good athlete and he was raw.
oh, do we get a freeze up on that?
Did we? Maybe.
Good
But
athlete.
you understand where he's coming from 100%, because you're looking at kids now and they're just so far accelerated ahead of it. Like how many times do we say if we had access to some of these things, or if we knew, some of these skills back then or whatever, that it would have just taken our game to an entire different level. I think there's a happy medium when it comes to it in terms of some good, some bad. But I think that's kind of like, it's always been that way when it came to sports and whatnot. They just have a lot more like at their fingertips than ever before, right? And you never found, like, when I was growing up, there wasn't
Al's
any
got to come
one-on-one
back in.
trainings.
I feel bad for Al. He's gonna come back in.
He makes. I had no idea he was so involved with the program like that. Like,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think that's absolutely phenomenal to have a structure like that in terms of like coaching your youth coaches. Like, think about if your
Remember we
program
talked
now
about.
had just a structure. That's
Remember
great.
we talked about briefly, like when I mentioned to you, like that. It was, and Al's taking that to a different level with his when he was with that program, but that there is. Oh, I lost him. Well, there. I'm losing everybody today. Must
I
be
was like, oh damn, like yeah, it just must be the day.
but there is a minimum skill level, right?
Right.
That I
Like, you
feel
almost
like
want to make him have to like take some type of test.
yeah. So from a player standpoint, but I think the
Coaches too.
B football really solves that. Like I think that's something that is okay. Yeah. So you were talking about good athlete to yeah. So you froze up there for a second. Al, can you hear me?
Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
You're up. Let me see if
There
I.
you
Okay.
go.
I'm back.
Oh, good.
Yeah, the athlete is just so much different. Like I remember when one of our wide receivers came, Des, and I saw him running routes as like a freshman, and I was like, "This is like crazy. This is like a senior in high school running routes." And it's just like, and then another one came, and then another one came. I was like, "Wow, like it's a lot different, Dave, than like we grew up with." There's no doubt. And quarterbacks, like you got guys going Sims and Madai and Lamar, like they are so ready, mentally, it's just amazing the level of training that kids are getting at this age, and it doesn't always mean success, but they're definitely much more prepared.
But it puts them on that track, though. You know what I'm saying? Like,
it really does.
And we're not saying
really
that guys
North
can't
Jersey is
do
a
that.
leader
Like,
with that too. I mean, it really is. Well, I think it goes way back to the speed and strength days. Of
it all started, like, Dave, with like guys like you and Chuck Mound and Parisi.
Bill
Like,
was really the first. Bill
I
Parisi
think that just took it to a
before
whole
me.
different level of like, there's stuff, and especially for football specifically, right? Like, you always just went and played another sport, and then it just opened up this window of like, hey, like, we can't do football year round up here, but if you need, like, if you want to, this is the track you have to go, right? So it started out as guys going to strength and conditioning coaches, and now it's become like, now we go to strength coaches, we go to speed coaches, we go to flexibility coaches, we go to receiver coaches. Like, everybody has their niche that everybody tries to jump on, and that, I think, is something that just didn't exist.
When my son was 10 years old, we drove to North Carolina because he wanted to go to this linebacker university. I think Dave and I spoke about it.
I remember that. Yeah, you talked to me about that. I remember that.
Yeah. And he still keeps in touch with those coaches from down there, and it's just like it's amazing. Like if you need help with something, there's a place to go get it. There's no doubt about it.
No, it's really, really interesting, and it's interesting how different places. So you see the reflection in high school, like North Jersey.
I was just going to say that
the parochial and the public school, but the parochial is kind of the leader of it. The competition level is so high that you get like these springboards of other ancillary services that come. Parent picks up his head and says, "Oh my God, this kid's better than me at this. Is there somebody that does that?" And then there's some guy that's like, "Hey, I can do this.
Yep.
I can help you with that." And he helps him with that. And then all of a sudden he has a business from it. Where, down here, when I moved down here, that was the thing. It's actually coming now. It's been coming much more.
The level of high school football in New Jersey is phenomenal.
And you see it because you're up and down the entire coast.
And I have as far as the Northeast is concerned, Pennsylvania has some teams for sure that could compete. Ohio definitely has some teams for sure that could compete. But from like Maine down, it's kind of like a little bit of hit and miss. But everything south of us is, as far as I'm concerned, ahead of us. Like Georgia and Alabama and Florida, like they have like the talent level there, the pools of talent level there, the speed of the game there it's just different. It's literally different.
Yeah, I think and Derek's talked about this before. One of the things about the South it's just the same way that it's happened, for in the South for baseball and some other sports. You could literally a trainer doesn't have to have a facility, right? You go to the park and you can work your guy out,
and you'll probably get 3 clients that are walking around at the park just because they see you doing it there too.
No
you know
doubt.
what I'm saying?
No
Because
doubt.
everybody's all in.
But also, obviously the other big part of it is, when you look at the NFL is a different thing, but college football, where college football is best, if most kids, if they're good football players, they probably have some aspirations to play at least in college somewhere.
Sure.
And if that's the case, you look at the South with blanketed so many football schools, obviously top tier as well, because you got the SEC and the weather component associated with all of it.
So big.
The South. It's the same reason why California is still good at football, even though football is like one of 9,000 sports everyone plays in California.
Yep.
But because of the weather, you're going to be able to do a lot of things. You get a modern day program that has a top tier program, or St. John Bosco that has a top tier program because of it. But you get like that corridor of the South. It's just like a perfect storm of college football significance, the ability to go work out whenever you want.
Yeah. They have spring football, right, in high school. Like, you look at Texas,
football,
their first block of the day is football. Like,
and they all play like we were like, they all play a lot of sports when they're young too.
Yeah.
What you have in the Northeast is, which is, I think a lot of it is because of space limitations, meaning the winter is a big block of months, and it's probably way more of a problem in New England, right?
Yep.
But the big block of months that you kind of have to be indoors, and there's only so many places that you can go indoors, and then these sports are the majority, like say soccer or whatever, take up the majority of the field space, or whatever, lacrosse or whatever it is. So it's harder to play like all your sports all the time because indoor space is tough, even though I try to do it with my kid, you know what I mean? But it's one of those things where in the South, you can go and do it because you don't have to worry about that. You got to go in. You don't have to go indoors.
Oh, girls basketball has the gym from this time to this time, so I can't get in there.
You're always a little bit limited.
Just spacing in general, right? Like, how many true indoor facilities can you go and really chuck the ball around like you need to and not have to worry about a kid running into a wall?
And it's hard for those facilities to stay in business because when the weather's nice, they have nobody inside it. When the weather is shitty for like a couple of weeks, they're all in there. But like, it's very, very hard to keep the lights on because those facilities are very big. It costs a lot of money to light them. It costs a lot of money to air condition them, or whatever the case may be. And then what do you do with all that space when nobody's in it? So kids go back to school. So like, it's definitely an advantage.
Yeah, like right now, it's like.
And that's what's also made, I think, a lot of the top tier programs more and more successful. Although I guess, you can speak to this more than I would be able to. But in North Jersey, there's so much emphasis in the pro-kill programs that there's probably been over time a little bit of watered down in some of the schools. At one point, they were all really, really, really the best, right? But now everybody's vying for a similar, I would guess, a similar pool of talent for the most part. And now you're seeing, the premier coaches or programs getting more of those guys. And then you might have a year of shifts or whatever, like a class here or a class there. But I've noticed that landscape in North Jersey, where it used to be everybody was at a certain level. Now there's a few that are really starting to separate, just because, the pool, there is a pool, and these other sports, which, although I think football's had a huge resurgence in my opinion, because I remember when I was coaching at Indian Hills, that was when you were in charge of the program. That was really when we were just starting to get out of that concussion thing, and you had really just started to really rebuild that Oakland youth program. You had much more kids than ever, but I think there's been a resurgence. But I do think that, like, I've always said this, like, soccer has done like an insane job of selling soccer in America. It's at the youth level. I'm not talking about high school or college. they've sold it like in a way with all these different levels. They've like almost mastered what you do. You did really great at Oakland, which was the A and the B, and I think that league you guys were in. They've mastered understanding kids are at different levels and keeping them in the program, and as they get better, moving them up or moving them down and going through it all. And I think in the long run, even though the beauty of football is the high school thing, nobody can touch that. No one can touch it. No one can touch the college thing. Although we're working on, I don't know, in college, we're working on maybe destroying some of it. But
it's getting there, but we're okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you keep throwing money around.
Soccer got a major push when the concussion thing hit.
Yeah.
So that 2-3 year period of the influx of kids, well, what am I going to play? Well, I'm going to play soccer, right? It kind of drove those numbers, especially like in, let's say, North Jersey, per se. But now you're starting to see a reversal in that because of flag football. So,
yes.
like,
and we talk about this all the time.
Like, right. The alternative used to be like, I'm going to go play soccer. Now the alternative, I'm going to go play competitive flag football. And now you see the emergence of girls flag football, right? And girls flag football is now a scholarship sport in colleges, right? It should be a state championship.
It'll be a sanctioned sport in high school soon.
That's going to happen all over the country. There's like no doubt about that. That business model is here to stay, and it's going to keep on going. And that helps football, in a big way, because when you're done playing flag football and you get to high school, you're going to play football. You're going to start to play maybe now in 7th grade and 8th grade, or 5th grade and 6th grade, versus like the football guys used to be afraid of flag football because like, well, they're going to go play flag instead of playing tackle. I'm like, well, that's better than them going to play soccer or going to play something that takes them completely out of the sport, right?
Correct.
So maybe that 5th grader needs a couple more years to develop.
Absolutely.
Right? And be ready to go play tackle football. So, yeah, that's definitely been a shift for sure as well.
We picked up this year, I think 6 kids between flag football and like we did 7-on-7 at the younger level, like, and which was, I mean, we weren't sure how it would go. And I really did it because we always had like 15, 18. I think we always had 14 right there. But then everyone kept asking for lower, and then my son was coming up anyway. So I'm like, all right, let's just try and.
I mean, we did 8. Sometimes there were some 7s. We would pump up a little bit. Like, it's been.
So we put it in, mirror what we were doing with our flag leagues, right? Like youth all the way up. And I wasn't sure. It was very hard to explain it to parents at first. But once the kids actually played it, so now they look at it like, at least in our town, they look at it like there's tackle, there's flag, and then if you want, there's competitive 7-on-7, but you're not going to get hit. It's tag. So it's passing. So. And they enjoy, what I've noticed is the kids, if they enjoy one of the 3, like if they enjoy flag, they may go into football. If they enjoy flag at 7-on-7, they probably go to football. If they enjoy the 7-on-7, they may or may not. If they enjoy 2 of the 3 outside of tackle, they probably will come. And that's what I saw. Like 5 or 6 of them came. They liked flag. They had a great time in flag. They like 7-on-7. And then they were like, I want to try tackle. And we got 5 or 6 kids from that who were good athletes, who came on board from that. I mean, originally my kid was like a flag kid. We weren't sure. And we were like, he loved flag so much. He's like, I want to try it, And I do think I was definitely one of those guys that was like, oh, flag, it was like, how is that going to help tackle? But I see it now. Like I see
absolutely
exactly what you say. It's just the more they're in it, the better.
The way you felt is very common, because they're like, we're going to lose this kid to flag. But the reality is you're keeping them in football. So that's, as far as like creating numbers and creating energy and synergy amongst your program, it's give kids as many opportunities they can to stay in football, because eventually they'll be where you want them to be, and that's, and flag 7-on-7, those are your athletes, right? So those are the kids that you really want to stay engaged, because you could lose them to other sports, no doubt.
Absolutely.
And you're able to create different levels too, like we talked about. You could create, because if everybody wants to play, there's no reason to have to cut anybody. You could have recreation flag, you could have travel flag, you could have
co-ed flag.
Yeah, exactly. Co-ed flag, girls flag. I mean, obviously is
That's the monster.
We started it as this will be the fourth year I think we're doing it. But we started the first year, like a few people that went to school with my son, the girls were like, "Hey, are you gonna have anything for girls?" And we're like, we'll put it, we'll have a girls league, see if anybody signs up, and like 20 girls signed up. They were all different ages, but we let them play. And then the next year it was like 60, and then it was 100, and we're like, it's crazy how girls flag has, and obviously the Olympics is going to make a big impact in that as well.
No, for sure, 100%.
But yeah, I mean, Al, this has been absolutely phenomenal talking to you. I mean, your insight is like it's first of all, it's very unique because you've been at you obviously you played, but you've been at the youth level and you're at an elite program high school wise, so you kind of see the two things, and you ran that youth program, and your insight on how to help the youth program advance is really a phenomenal. I actually think that you should go around and as a sidebar gig for you, Al,
in your free time.
In your free time,
I'll tell you what, I'll do that part for free, just to sit down with people, because I think, listen, we all do this for one reason: we love football. Like, no one's getting rich coaching high school football.
No.
You're certainly not getting rich coaching youth football, right? So the only way that this gets to keep going is if we keep kids safe and we supply as much knowledge as we can to the coaches, and it's at the youth levels, because that's where it's all coming from. That's where we get all our kids from. So you could tell right off the bat when you get a kid that's been coached well, you're like,
yep,
listen, this kid is on cruise control right now.
Absolutely.
So I think it's a great thing that you guys are doing as well.
Thanks so much, Al. We'll let you go. It's been great having you on. Listen, you just go to Game Breaker. Al's email's on there if you have a question about it. Like I said, our program's on it. We think it's it's a mandatory and necessary part of it, and it's interesting because the parents have started to ask about can we play with it. Obviously, most of the kids aren't, so they haven't played with. Some of the kids have played, but I always tell them.
Yeah, so Alfred University, Alfred University, upstate New York.
Yeah.
So they played a whole entire collegiate game last weekend with guardian caps on. Every member of
just
the team.
Guardian. Did they have like any of the helmet logo?
No,
or
they
just
did
Guardian?
not. They just had a flat color. Like,
they didn't give a shit. They were
They
just
didn't
like,
care.
yep, let's go.
What was the feedback?
We have now hundreds of high school programs across the country using them in games. We have.
Well, I mean, Al, like for you, just think about how many, if we don't even count youth. Think about how many high school programs, right? Like within your territory, your area. I mean, it's just phenomenal. Like all it's going to take, like now you see Alfred doing it. Like just watch how many more now do it, right? Because everything's a copycat, and it promotes the game and the safety. Like that's what people want to see. Now the president of this university is going to ask the president of Alfred University, hey, what are your guys are doing this? Or you're on the front end of this technology. Like it's good for everybody to kind of just, hey, this is what it is, let's continue to help grow the game, and this is a piece of it.
100%. Couldn't have said it better.
Appreciate you, bud.
Thanks so much for coming on, and good luck the rest of the season. You guys have a heck of a team.
Yeah, keep going, man.
We got a tough one this week. Cardinal Hayes.
I like watching him.
That quarterback is electric. Have you watched him play yet?
No, I haven't.
Yeah,
I'll check it out though.
Take a look. Yeah.
All right, Al. Good luck this week, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for coming on.
Soon, man. Thank you.
All right. Be well. Thank you.
That was great. That was an excellent topic.
You know what I didn't take into account too? Like we talked about it, like because he goes and meets with so many of these youth organizations, because obviously for that, like that's where your moneymaker is, right? Because like if you think about it, you sell how many in bulk to a youth organization, depending on whatever. He sees these ones that are just shit shows, dude. Like, oh, what do you mean? Like, we can have each kid pay for it individually, or just craziness, I'm sure that he sees. But so that his feedback is now like, wow, like if you did something like this or don't do this. And I'm sure he picks up on positive things as well from each of those meetings or whatever. But like, you want to talk about a guy that's on the forefront of like what football in America, at least in the Northeast, is, right, in his territory. Like, those are the guys you want to talk to. And those aren't the people that you would even think about it, right? You're like, oh, he's just a salesman. It's like, no, dude, like, this guy really knows like what's going on, and that he's been through it in numerous levels, right? He's done it as a youth guy, he's doing it as a high school coach, he's done it, and now he's seen his son is now also going through that entire recruiting process, you know, as somewhat of a maybe an undersized linebacker trying to like, so he's navigating that world on a team that's phenomenal, surrounded by like 5 stars all over the place, right? Like going to Notre Dame and Ohio State and Boston College. And so he's kind of like, he just wears so many hats and has so much knowledge across the board, from a coach, as a dad, as an organizer, it's like, damn, dude, like he's like an encyclopedia.
Well, with you know, that's the thing about meeting with all these teams on it, is with the Guardian. The Guardian thing is interesting because
when I saw Jabril Peppers wearing it in the game this weekend, Dave, I was like, my first thought was, oh, he must have signed a deal or something. Yeah, like, you know, like, you know, whatever. But then that was the other question, because you know me, I'm an equipment guy, optics type of guy. Like, you're gonna have one dude on the New England Patriots running around there with a mushroom cap on and not have it look like everybody else's helmet. So that's why I asked Al, are your guys doing that part of it? Because that's what it's gonna be. Now, not only are you selling Guardians, you got to sell 4 or 5 different helmet caps to match the helmet for the week, right? Like, so that's what I think is part of the whole thing too. You know, like, especially in the NFL, where, look, dude, you got to wear socks a certain way or you're getting fined.
I think that's it's really, really interesting that from a safety standpoint, people are wearing Guardian caps. Like, it makes me think, like, is the helmet really? It probably really has to change, I guess. My thing is this.
Roger Goodell said that they are very close to having helmets. Not to cut you off.
No,
like,
go ahead.
But like, not to like, I literally saw him. He was on the Pat McAfee show the other day, and he talked about it because Pat McAfee brings this stuff up all the time. Obviously, like, he's a big, like, safety type dude, you know, as a kicker or whatever. But he brought, like, he was asking Goodell, and he said that they are very, very, very close to having helmets, if not already, somewhere on the market, right? That helmets that literally mimic a Guardian in some way, shape, or form. I'm not saying optics, it looks like it. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying they have helmets that are basically a built-in Guardian, but like the helmet itself. Okay, so that technology, and think about how fast technology moves, Dave. Like, you know, like huddle. Like, one year we didn't have huddle, all of a sudden next year it's everywhere, dude.
Football helmet technology
that's what's been slow,
awful. Like, if you you brought up huddle. Huddle's a good example. Look, from the time they came out with the first raw huddles, which were really raw, to now and what huddle can do. I mean,
they break down your film for you.
It's 15 years, right? And this is going on. Like, huddle technology from, you know, the time they went to regular helmets in the, like, I don't know, 60s to now has not evolved in the way that you know, they might say, oh, it's evolved. We have this,
yeah,
and this.
You would think that it would have been like somewhere like here. It's like, I mean, I know it's changed, and obviously you could see it changing quicker and quicker and quicker, you know, as the years kind of progress, right? Like, I think they've picked up on, like, hey, we better continue to, you know, move forward with this technology. But like, for a span of like whatever amount of years, not much changed.
Right.
You can see the trends looking at, you know, if you look at just the NFL clips, like, throughout the years, right? Like, I can remember when I was growing up, there used to be the skinny bar face mask, and then you had those real thick, like, plastic ones, right? And then, you know, for a while you had like guys wearing all kinds of like crazy, almost like gladiator looking face masks, right? And then you saw the helmet go from like a bubble to like this, and like all, like, you've just seen changes, but I think you're going to see more rapid progression with that.
I think that's smart, because that really makes it, people will feel a lot more comfortable with everything from that standpoint. So
100%.
But that was a great show. We will get off here. Some great comments in the chat, by the way.
God.
No, they were good. Actually, good. No.
Oh, nice. Everybody's with us now.
One guy wants me to play the piano, so.
Oh, that's all right. Well, you get a lot of requests for that, dude. So like.
Let's get off the show.
All right, man.
Until tomorrow.
Be good. Yes.